The city of Larkhaven was unusually quiet that morning, as if the bustling streets themselves were holding their breath. A thin mist clung to the riverbanks, curling around the iron lampposts that lined the cobblestone streets. From a distance, the hum of traffic was faint, muffled, and distant, like the world itself was hesitating before the day fully began. Evelyn Carter stepped out of the brick townhouse she had inherited from her late aunt, adjusting the scarf around her neck against the chill. She had always loved early mornings, the way the city seemed to belong to her alone before everyone else arrived. But today, there was an odd tension in the air, a whisper that something unseen had shifted. Her destination was the Larkhaven Historical Society, a small building tucked between a modern cafe and a boutique bookstore. Inside, the air smelled faintly of old paper and polished wood, and the walls were lined with portraits whose eyes seemed to follow her. Evelyn had been working there as a research archivist for nearly 3 years, meticulously cataloguing documents, photographs, and letters from the city's storied past. "Morning, Evelyn," greeted Thomas, her colleague, peering over the counter with a warm smile. Thomas was a lanky man with spectacles that constantly slid down his nose, and an infectious enthusiasm for all things mysterious. "Morning," she replied, offering a faint smile in return. "Anything unusual today?" Thomas shook his head, but there was an unspoken unease in his expression. "Nothing out of the ordinary, yet. Though, you know how these things go." Evelyn wandered toward the section of the archive she had been assigned, the 1980s criminal case files. She wasn't particularly drawn to crime in the conventional sense, it was the human stories behind them that fascinated her, the small details that revealed the lives and secrets of ordinary people. Today, however, she had the feeling that she wasn't just following old stories, she was about to uncover one that still lingered, unresolved, like a ghost in the city's memory. Among the yellowed folders, one, in particular, caught her attention. Unlike the others, which were neatly labeled and stored, this folder was unmarked. Its edges were frayed, and it had the faint scent of damp paper, suggesting it had been hidden away for decades. Curiosity prickled at her senses, and she carefully pulled it from the shelf. The folder contained letters, photographs, and a single journal, all belonging to a woman named Margaret Maggie Whitmore. Maggie had lived in Larkhaven in the late 1980s, a period marked by economic uncertainty and social upheaval. Her letters were addressed to an unknown confidant, detailing events that were both mundane and troubling. Evelyn could sense the urgency and fear hidden between the lines, as though Maggie had been documenting something dangerous, something that might explain why her records had been hidden for so long. As Evelyn turned the pages, a photograph slipped out and fluttered to the floor. She picked it up, her eyes narrowing. It depicted a young woman, Maggie, standing at the edge of the same river that ran through Larkhaven. Her expression was solemn, almost haunted, and behind her, a figure barely visible in the shadows seemed to be watching. Evelyn's pulse quickened. There was a story here, a mystery that demanded to be unraveled. That evening, Evelyn returned to her apartment, a modest space above a small bakery in the center of the city. The streets were now alive with lights and the chatter of people finishing their day, but her mind remained on Maggie Whitmore. She set the folder on her desk and opened the journal to the first page. Maggie's handwriting was neat but firm, each line deliberate. "I have seen something I should not have," the entry began. "The night is dangerous, and I fear that if I speak, no one will believe me. Still, I must write this down, for my memory is the only weapon I have." Evelyn felt a shiver run down her spine. There was a raw honesty in Maggie's words, a desperation that transcended time. She made herself a cup of tea and settled into her chair, reading late into the night, unaware that shadows outside her window had begun to stir. Meanwhile, Elsewhere in Lark Haven, Detective Nathaniel Nate Hayes was reviewing unsolved cases from the 1980s. Nate had a reputation for his methodical approach, his patience, and an almost uncanny intuition. Unlike Evelyn, who had stumbled upon Maggie's folder by chance, Nate had been searching for connections that others had overlooked. Something about the old cases, a thread that connected them all, had begun to reveal itself in his mind, a pattern of disappearances, unexplained deaths, and cryptic letters. That night, as Nate pored over the documents in his dimly lit office, a new name caught his attention: Maggie Whitmore. He had read about her in passing years ago, a young woman who had vanished without a trace, leaving behind nothing but rumors and whispers. Nate frowned, sensing that her disappearance was not random, but rather the key to something much larger, something that had been buried in the shadows of the city for decades. The following morning, Evelyn returned to the Historical Society, the folder clutched tightly in her hands. Thomas noticed the intensity in her gaze. "You look like you've seen a ghost," he remarked. "Something like that," Evelyn murmured, laying out the documents on the table. "I think Maggie Whitmore's story, it's bigger than we thought. There's a connection here, something no one has pieced together." Thomas leaned in, examining the photographs and letters. "This could be the breakthrough we've been waiting for. But be careful, Evelyn. Some histories are dangerous for a reason." Determined to uncover the truth, Evelyn began cross-referencing the letters with newspaper archives, old police reports, and public records. As the days passed, a picture began to form a web of secrets that stretched across decades, involving influential figures in the city, hidden alliances, and crimes that had been conveniently forgotten. One evening, while tracing Maggie's steps along the riverbank, Evelyn discovered a hidden path she hadn't noticed before. It led to a small, abandoned boathouse, its wooden planks rotting and windows boarded. She pushed the door open cautiously, revealing a dusty interior filled with old furniture and papers scattered across the floor. At the center of the room, a chest lay partially hidden beneath a tarp. Evelyn's hands trembled as she lifted the cover, revealing more of Maggie's writings, detailed maps, and cryptic notes that hinted at a confrontation, something that had led to Maggie's disappearance. The discovery was a turning point. Evelyn knew that someone, even now, might not want these secrets unearthed. Every step forward brought both excitement and danger, a duality that Maggie had faced all those years ago. As the first part of her investigation concluded, Evelyn felt a strange connection to Maggie, as if the woman were guiding her from beyond the veil of time. Each letter, each photograph, each page of the journal was a breadcrumb leading deeper into the heart of a mystery that had lain dormant for decades. Outside, the city of Lark Haven continued its rhythm, unaware that in one quiet apartment, a story was being rewritten, and in the shadows, past and present were on the brink of colliding. The next morning, Evelyn woke with a renewed sense of purpose. The city outside her window was drenched in sunlight, the golden rays bouncing off the glass buildings, casting intricate reflections onto the streets below. For a moment, it seemed like Lark Haven itself was encouraging her to continue the journey she had begun. She packed Maggie Whitmore's folder, now thick with all the new discoveries from the boathouse, and set off toward the Historical Society. Each step she took along the cobblestones carried the weight of anticipation, as though the city were both witness and participant in the unfolding mystery. Inside, Thomas greeted her with a concerned glance. "You look like you've uncovered a storm." "I think we're about to," Evelyn replied, spreading the newly gathered papers across the large oak table. There were photographs of clandestine meetings, maps marked with locations Evelyn had only just begun to decipher, and pages of Maggie's handwritten notes, now more ominous than ever. Thomas picked up one photograph carefully. This looks like some kind of secret society." Look at the insignia on their lapels. Evelyn leaned in, studying the photo. The symbols were unfamiliar, almost archaic, yet there was a pattern, a recurring emblem that appeared across several documents and letters. Something about it was eerily precise, suggesting a level of organization that went far beyond ordinary criminal activity. As they examined the documents, a particular letter drew Evelyn's attention. It was addressed to Maggie from someone named Lucien Hartwell. His handwriting was sharp, elegant, and cold. "You should not have looked," the letter warned. "Some things are better left buried. You have trespassed into a world you cannot control. Be careful, or the consequences will be yours alone." Evelyn shivered. The warning was explicit, yet the letter also contained subtle clues, directions, times, and coded phrases that hinted at a meeting. Maggie, it seemed, had been on the verge of discovering something monumental. Determined to follow the trail, Evelyn began mapping out the locations mentioned across the letters and photographs. One place, in particular, kept appearing: an old art gallery on the outskirts of Lark Haven, long abandoned and rumored to have been a hub for underground gatherings during the late 1980s. That evening, Evelyn decided to investigate. The streets were quieter than usual, and the city's hum seemed distant, replaced by the whispering wind that rustled leaves across the sidewalks. The gallery was as she expected, derelict, its large windows clouded with grime, the front doors chained and padlocked. She jotted notes and took photographs, but she couldn't shake the feeling that someone or something was observing her. Meanwhile, Detective Nathaniel Hayes had also begun noticing anomalies in the old cases. The disappearances, once thought unrelated, were all linked by the presence of that same mysterious emblem Evelyn had seen in the photographs. It seemed the past was refusing to remain hidden, and Nate felt the tension of decades-old secrets pressing down on him. As Evelyn continued her research over the following days, she uncovered a series of coded letters between Maggie and Lucien. While the tone of the correspondence was formal, it hinted at a deeper relationship, a complicated mix of trust, fear, and intellectual respect. The letters suggested that Maggie had been coerced into investigating certain individuals in Lark Haven, powerful people who wielded influence quietly but ruthlessly. One night, as Evelyn pored over the documents, she noticed a pattern in the codes, a cipher that revealed the locations of past meetings and key pieces of evidence. The realization sent a chill through her. If Maggie had been close to uncovering the truth, then these locations might still hold the answers, or perhaps the dangers, that Maggie herself had faced. Determined to follow the trail, Evelyn contacted Nate. Though they had never met in person, their paths had crossed indirectly through shared records and historical findings. When she explained her discoveries, he listened intently, his expression unreadable. "This confirms some of the connections I've been tracing," Nate said finally. If Maggie Whitmore was involved with Lucien Hartwell and whatever organization he represented, then everything we've overlooked in the 1980s suddenly fits. "But Evelyn, be careful. You're not just digging up the past, you're putting yourself in the line of fire." The next days were a whirlwind of activity. Evelyn and Nate worked together, cross-referencing archival material with current city maps, uncovering old safe houses, hidden pathways, and forgotten basements that had long been sealed. Each discovery deepened the mystery, revealing a network of influence and secrecy that extended far beyond anything they had imagined. One night, Evelyn received an anonymous email with the subject line, "Stop or regret." There was no sender information, only a single attachment, a photo of her apartment window, taken from the street below. Her heart raced as she realized that someone was watching her. Maggie's warnings echoed in her mind. Despite the threat, Evelyn refused to be intimidated. The sense of urgency, of responsibility to uncover the truth, was too strong. She and Nate devised a careful plan to investigate the most promising leads: an abandoned theater, a derelict warehouse, and a private estate that had belonged to a now-deceased industrial magnate. Each location, they suspected, contained pieces of the puzzle Maggie had been assembling. Their first stop was the abandoned theater. Inside, dust and shadows dominated the space, the faint scent of mildew mixing with old stage curtains. Evelyn's flashlight cut through the darkness, revealing old posters of plays and performances from decades past. As they explored the backstage area, Nate discovered a hidden door, partially obscured by rotting scenery. Behind it was a small room filled with papers, photographs, and a diary, another piece of Maggie's trail. The diary chronicled meetings, names, and dates, but also included personal reflections, Maggie's fears, her hopes, and her growing realization that she was entangled in something far more dangerous than she had anticipated. Evelyn read aloud excerpts, the words echoing in the empty theater, "I don't know whom to trust. Every face hides a story, every word conceals a motive. I am alone in this, yet I cannot stop. The truth is too precious to let die in silence." Evelyn felt a kinship with Maggie, the two separated by decades yet united in purpose. The discovery was both exhilarating and terrifying. They had crossed a threshold, one step closer to understanding, one step deeper into a labyrinth of secrets. The following days were filled with meticulous work, tracing connections, photographing evidence, and decrypting coded messages. Evelyn's apartment became a hub of investigation, papers and photographs strewn across every surface, the walls covered with maps, strings, and notes. She worked tirelessly, fueled by curiosity and the unyielding desire to honor Maggie's courage. Then came the breakthrough. Among the coded letters, Evelyn discovered a reference to a hidden chamber beneath the old estate of the industrial magnate. According to Maggie's notes, it was there that the most critical evidence was concealed: a ledger detailing the organization's activities, names of influential members, and the locations of their secret meetings. The revelation set a new course. Evelyn and Nate prepared for the most daring part of their investigation, aware that the path ahead was fraught with danger. They would confront the remnants of a shadowed network, a living echo of the past Maggie had documented, and perhaps come face to face with the very people who had orchestrated the events that had left so many questions unanswered. As night fell over Lark Haven, the city seemed to hold its breath once more. Evelyn's determination burned brighter than fear. The past and present were converging, and the answers they sought were within reach, waiting to be unearthed from the shadows where history had tried to bury them. The night they approached the industrial magnate's estate, the air was crisp and heavy with anticipation. Streetlights cast long, fragmented shadows across the pavement, and Evelyn's heart thumped in rhythm with every step. She and Nate moved cautiously, sticking to the alleyways and avoiding the main roads. Each corner they turned brought them closer to the estate and to answers that had eluded them for decades. The estate itself was imposing, a relic of opulence from a bygone era, now cloaked in darkness. Its gates were rusted but unlocked, creaking ominously as they pushed them open. The mansion loomed above them, windows reflecting the faint glow of the city lights like watchful eyes. Evelyn felt the weight of history pressing down, as if every brick held the whispers of secrets past. Inside, the main hall was silent except for the occasional creak of floorboards under their feet. Dust motes floated in the beams of their flashlights, revealing the faded grandeur of the once majestic home. They navigated through corridors, past portraits of stern-faced ancestors, their eyes seeming to follow every movement. Nate paused by a set of stairs leading to the basement. According to Maggie's notes, this is it. The chamber should be beneath the main hall. Evelyn's hands shook slightly as she felt for the hidden latch described in the diary. It clicked under her fingers, and a narrow door swung open to reveal a staircase descending into darkness. The smell of damp stone and time-old decay enveloped them as they stepped down, the beam of their flashlights cutting through the black. At the bottom, they found the hidden chamber. The walls were lined with shelves crammed with ledgers, photographs, and more coded letters, everything Maggie had been gathering before her disappearance. On a central table lay a massive ledger, its pages meticulously organized with names, dates, and transactions. Evelyn carefully opened it, tracing the entries with a trembling finger. The ledger was staggering. It documented the organization's network, detailing meetings, financial transfers, and even evidence of coercion and manipulation of public figures. Each page revealed layers of corruption, linking the city's prominent figures to the secretive society Maggie had been investigating. Evelyn realized that this was not just a matter of unsolved crimes, it was a blueprint of influence and power that had shaped Larkhaven for decades. This is monumental," Evelyn whispered, almost to herself. Maggie was right. The truth, it's all here. Nate nodded, his expression grim. And dangerous. If anyone finds out we have this. His voice trailed off, leaving the threat unspoken but palpable. They carefully photographed every page, taking meticulous notes. As they worked, Evelyn discovered a section of the ledger marked with Lucien Hartwell's name. He was not just a peripheral figure, he had orchestrated several of the Society's operations, manipulating events from the shadows. There was a photograph tucked between the pages, showing him in a meeting with high-ranking officials, the same emblem Evelyn had seen throughout her investigation. Suddenly, a noise echoed from the stairwell. Footsteps, slow, deliberate, and coming closer. Evelyn froze. Nate's hand went to his pocket, fingers brushing the edge of the small flashlight they had brought as a defensive tool. The footsteps grew louder, and a shadow appeared at the top of the stairs. "Who's there?" Nate called, his voice steady despite the tension. A figure descended slowly, emerging from the shadows. Lucien Hartwell. Not aged as much as expected, but with an aura of calculated menace that made Evelyn's stomach tighten. He had known they were coming, or perhaps he had been watching all along. "Impressive," Lucien said smoothly, his eyes glinting with amusement. "You've gone quite far for someone so curious. But you've trespassed where you shouldn't have." Evelyn straightened, trying to mask her fear with determination. "This ends tonight, Lucien. Your secrets are out. The truth won't stay buried anymore." Lucien chuckled softly, pacing slowly. "The truth is never what it seems, Evelyn. You think you're uncovering justice, but all you're doing is stepping into a game far bigger than you understand." Maggie Whitmore understood that, and she paid the price for it. He stepped closer, and Evelyn could see the cold precision in his expression. But then something unexpected happened. Nate, ever prepared, produced a small device from his jacket. It wasn't a weapon, but a high-powered camera with live streaming capability. "Everything you say, Lucien, is being recorded," he said firmly. "The public will see everything." Lucien paused, his expression faltering for the briefest moment. "You don't know what you're threatening," he said, voice lowering. "You'll regret this." Evelyn felt the weight of responsibility pressing on her. She thought of Maggie, of the countless others who had been silenced. "No more hiding," she said, her voice strong. "The city deserves to know. The people deserve to know." Lucien's eyes narrowed, then, almost imperceptibly, he stepped back. "You may have won this round," he said quietly, almost to himself, before turning and retreating up the stairs. The sound of his footsteps faded, leaving an eerie silence in the chamber. Evelyn and Nate let out a breath they hadn't realized they were holding. The ledger and evidence were safe, and the first step toward exposing the society had been taken. But the victory was cautious and tempered by the knowledge that the organization still had influence, and Lucien's reach was far from over. Over the following weeks, Evelyn worked tirelessly to bring the information to light. With Nate's assistance, she coordinated with investigative journalists, ensuring that every fact was verified, every connection traced. The city of Larkhaven began to awaken to the truths that had lain hidden for decades: corruption, manipulation, and the courage of those who dared to uncover it. Evelyn found herself thinking often of Maggie Whitmore, imagining the triumph she would have felt knowing her work had not been in vain. It was a bittersweet victory, tinged with the knowledge of the dangers faced and the lives affected, but ultimately, it was a triumph of perseverance and moral courage. One evening, as Evelyn walked along the city's riverfront, the water reflecting the glow of the sunset, she felt a quiet sense of completion. The journey had been long, perilous, and fraught with uncertainty, but the truth had been unearthed. She had honored the legacy of Maggie Whitmore and uncovered the threads that had bound Larkhaven's past in secrecy. Nate joined her on the promenade, nodding toward the water. "You did it, Evelyn. Maggie would be proud." Evelyn smiled faintly, her gaze fixed on the horizon. "We did it," she corrected. "Together." The city around them continued its bustling rhythm, unaware of the secrets that had just been revealed, the shadows that had been illuminated. Yet Evelyn knew that history was now alive in a new way, its lessons, its dangers, and its truths available for all to see. And in that, there was hope, and a promise that the past could no longer dictate the future in silence. As the evening deepened, Evelyn and Nate walked side by side, two witnesses to a city transformed by revelation, their journey a testament to courage, determination, and the enduring power of uncovering the truth. The echoes of Maggie Whitmore's voice lingered, guiding them forward, reminding them that some truths are worth every risk, every fear, and every shadow that must be crossed to bring them into the light. And somewhere, hidden in the folds of Larkhaven's streets and alleys, the secrets still whispered, waiting for those who dared to listen, and those brave enough to act. The end.